Welcome to Scoop World Order. It is vacation time for the coaches. These guys are ready to get on the first thing smoking and get out of the Woody Hayes and get out of Ohio, take their families on a nice little 3-week vacation. But they got done with the last major official visit of the visit period for the summer. Some big names in town. We're going to break all that down. Got 2 commitments from the Ville. Shout out Glenville. Shout out Teddy, Troy, and Ted Sr. and all the great Glenville guys that I know. But we're going to break those guys down a little bit. We're going to break down some of the guys that did not commit, that some people were hoping would commit. And we have a guy who's likely to commit in July. So we're going to break all that down for you guys. We're also going to take your questions, talk a little bit about what the next month looks like for the team. Because the players aren't off. The players get the screws put to them by Mickey Marotti as Summer 2 begins on Monday, where these guys are going to be having some hardcore conditioning, really tough running. It's always probably the most brutal part of the year other than training camp. So we're going to get into a little bit of that as we get rolling. But as always, we appreciate you guys tuning in with us. Thank you so much. We're very grateful for you guys tuning in. If you enjoy our content, please leave us a like, click subscribe. And if you like our live shows, please click on the little bell. You'll get a little alert when we go live. I know a lot of you guys like to tune in. A lot of you guys are regulars, and we appreciate you guys, and we always love interacting with you guys. And as always, shout out where you guys are from. Again, I love reading where you guys are watching from because it seems to be growing and growing and growing. It's all over the world, and it's really, really special to see how much this has grown. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of these questions. But first, I'm going to bring in an all-time official visitor, Mr. Nevada Buck. Nevada, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great. I just want to say to everybody, thank you so much. Our last 24 hours has been our best 24 hours for traffic and new subscriptions that we had since the day that we opened the site. That's how big it's been. And it's probably the Kirk Barton breaking of the Bryce West commitment Instagram secret video that did this. But whatever it was, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody because it's been really humbling to see everybody's response and everybody's reaction. And I just want you to know we love doing these shows. We love bringing you guys this information. And this is fun, man. We're having a good time. Hopefully you guys can tell how much fun Kirk and I are having doing these shows, and lots to fill you in on. Lots of things happening. Some great stuff happening for Ohio State. We told you it was going to happen soon. Some of it's happened already. If you're on Buckeye Scoop, you know what that is. Some of it's getting ready to happen. You know that as well. So let's get right into it.
Yeah, again, we had the 2 Glenville commitments pop over the weekend. Bryce West obviously committed early, and then he committed again. Again, great kid, super excited for the kid, really nice kid, great family. We did a big article on him earlier in the week, and we don't really do articles ever with quotes from kids just because we personally think they're kind of worthless, but we did it as a favor, and it worked. So he committed. So shout out Buckeye Scoop, shout out Bill Green. We got that done for him and the family, and it got some things solidified for Bryce to pull the trigger. And Damarian Witten, really interesting night. So he commits. Obviously, he's a Glenville guy. He's a little undersized now, 6'2", weighs about 200 pounds. They hope he grows into a tight end, 6'4"-ish, maybe 230-ish movement type tight end. But I don't think I've ever seen this. Vince Morrow, the tight end coach from Kentucky, actually tweeted about him and said something that was almost incoherent. And I think Vince is great, but I mean, I was shocked that he said we got the guy we want, and he spelled a bunch of stuff that was something like we got a tough SEC or whatever it was. I can't remember what it was verbatim, but it was hilarious that he tweeted when the kid committed, shading him. And Vince is 70 years old, which is and I get you can be a little butthurt sometimes if everyone was projecting a kid to go to Kentucky, and all those Kentucky, beat writers are all getting crushed right now because they're all crystal balling this kid. I'm like, a kid that's got an Ohio State offer is going to go to Kentucky. That's happened one time in history. And honestly, and I love Antonio Hall, but it didn't work out for him. He didn't get drafted, never heard from again. I think it was all SEC, but it's, you go to Ohio State, man, it's a whole different ball of wax for you in your career and even post-career. But Nevada, have you ever seen, I'm sure you've heard of assistants tweeting about recruits, but I mean, what was your take on that?
Well, my take on it was that Vince was drunk. So that was my first thought. My first thought was, man, he's really hammered right now, and he's hammered and he's upset, and so he's just he's getting loose on Twitter and that's just never a good idea, man. We always tell you, like we tell the youngsters, it's like don't don't drink and dial. Well, don't drink and text either, because that just was not a good look all the way around. And like you said, I like Vince. I like Vince. I think he's done wonders there at Kentucky, and I think he's a formidable recruiting competitor. But that was not his finest hour, man. That was kind of embarrassing. But I guess when you get old and crotchety and you get into the Bud Light or whatever he was drinking, then something had to give.
Yeah, and I mean, and again, he's the kind of guy I always wonder what would he do if he was at like a high-powered school like Ohio State and he was the tight ends coach, because he's an incredible recruiter and he pulls guys that Kentucky probably shouldn't pull. But still, it's hard to give Vince a pass when he's like going after an Ohio State kid, but it wasn't a good look. And honestly, he should probably apologize, reach out to the kid, or delete the tweet. I mean, he probably won't do any of those, but that's what I would do. But again, it is what it is. So we're going to get to some of these kids who are here. Justin Scott is probably the best player that was here this weekend, other than Bryce. 5-star defensive tackle. He's from Chicago. I wish he was from St. Ignatius in Cleveland, but he's not. But he's a monster. A lot of people have him going to Notre Dame. Had a nice visit. Again, it's hard to screw up these Ohio State visits. This is a kid, of all the kids that I wish we could get, a 6'5", 310-pound 5-star defensive tackle. It's got to be right at the top of the list. But he had a good trip. Nevada, do you give Larry Johnson a chance in this one?
Absolutely. I mean, look, let me explain to you guys the process when you guys listen out there. When you're wondering, how do Kirk and Nevada determine whether or not the guy had a good visit or not, or how are things go? Because a lot of times, if you talk to the kids, you know what they're going to say? They're going to say, we had a great visit. It was great. I like the tradition. I like the uniforms. The building was nice. I mean, you're never going to get it out of that. So you've got to pick up on the little other context clues. You've got to see about Ohio State. How does Ohio State feel about it? How does Ohio State feel about the NIL package that they presented to them? How does Ohio State feel like they have to up the NIL package to them? How do support the people support system, the mentors, the coaches, the other people that are coming with them? How do they feel about it? You try to get that stuff. And from all the indications that we got on this was a good visit for Ohio State. Ohio State made up ground, great relationship with Larry Johnson. This is going to be a later decider. I wouldn't, I don't think he's going to be deciding anytime, in the next few weeks or even in the next couple of months. But I think Ohio State's got more than a puncher's chance here. So that's all I can give you right now. I think Ohio State made up ground, absolutely in there. Ohio State feels like they're absolutely in there. And I would even dare say that they feel like they might have nudged ahead of Notre Dame after this visit. We'll be revisiting this one for the next weeks and a few months, but I would expect, in the November, December timeframe, that you'll see a decision, and hopefully it breaks for the good guys.
Yeah, and I think he's a kid that NIL, at premium positions, man, you got to pay for him. These big guys, again, projected to Notre Dame right now, but you sweeten that deal, get that bag a little bigger. I mean, I think that it's kind of like when you look at NFL free agency and you see the guys that really get paid. It's cornerbacks, quarterbacks, defensive ends, defensive tackles, like offensive tackles. Those are like the premium spots, not running backs, not receivers are less and less. But man, you get a big 5-star D tackle, man. Those are the kind of guys when you're Mark Pantoni and you have a salary cap, you basically have, this is how much money D Foundation or the society or whatever, this is how much money they have. This is how much they have allotted to football recruiting. For day one, here's your check. Welcome to Ohio State. Like a lot of these kids get now. There's some guys that get a pretty big bag. It's usually not the Ohio kids. It's usually these national kids, these kids that are at premium positions, because that's just what the going rate is. And if you want to get a kid to feel a little more comfortable, go a little further away from home in Chicago and leaving your mom behind, I mean, Ohio State, is about as easy to get to. It's probably as easy to get to Notre Dame because you can take a 40-minute flight and you're there, or you can drive 5 hours and you're in Columbus. And I think that the trajectory of Ohio State is much higher than Notre Dame at this point. So, again, and plus the depth chart, if Mike Hall leaves early, there's some playing time to be had next year. We got a lot of guys that are really green that haven't played much. So it's appetizing. The next guy we're going to get to is probably the biggest name that everyone is worried about. Aaron Scott is a kid who seems to love Michigan, loves Ohio State, has done both things, done both photo shoots, kid that a lot of people were worried about going to Michigan. Nevada, how worried are you about Aaron Scott? And if he does go to Michigan, can we replace him?
Well, here, what I'll tell you is what I said to everybody in the last week, 10 days. There was rumors out there that Scott and West were both going to Michigan and that we were losing them, and people were lining up on the ledge. And I said, guys, relax. Everything's going to be fine. We're not losing both these kids to Michigan. It's not going to happen. And lo and behold, what happens? West commits. You steal the commitment video from his sister's Instagram and post it on there earlier today or whatever that was, and we got that commitment story out there. Kidding, and everything's good with West. Now with Scott, Ohio State loves where they're sitting with Scott right now. Ryan Day's got a great relationship with him. He's vibing with both the position coaches, with both the corners and safeties coaches. He's feeling good about the defensive staff. Ohio State feels like they're in a good position right now. They're not panicking. They're not throwing the bag at him. They're not feeling like they have to, kind of amend their position either. And so what I'm going to tell you guys about Scott is relax. I think we're just fine with him. I think everything's going to work out. I really do believe that he's going to end up a Buckeye. He has not committed. He has not silently committed. He has not said, okay, I'm going to be a Buckeye. But I think we're really well positioned. I think Ohio State's done a really good job with them. And I think this one's going to seem more dramatic than it really is, but I think he's going to be a Buckeye in the end. And as always, if for some reason we don't get him, it's not a zero-sum game. It's not like if we don't get him, we can't get somebody else. There are other options out there for cornerbacks, but I think he's going to be a Buckeye, and I think he's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, there's nothing, he's from Dayton. It's not like he's from Toledo. It's not like he went to Toledo Whitmer, which has been, a factory for Michigan kids. Michigan hasn't gotten many kids that Ohio State's wanted in the last 20 years or so. I mean, we've really shut that off. And, and I think Ohio State, again, the trajectory, again, I always go back to the coaching thing. Ryan Day signed a long-term deal, and Jim Harbaugh, a year ago was interviewing with the Minnesota Vikings on signing day. So, if you're looking for stability closer to home, Tim Walton's been an NFL guy. Coach Jalen Ramsey can get you to the league playing time. I think all these guys want to play early, especially corners. They all want to play early. Our corners were okay last year, but they weren't great. You're not oh my God.
Hold on. Our corners were not okay last year. We had 0 interceptions. That can't qualify as okay. I mean, they were O. I wouldn't give them the K. They were O. But our cornerback play last year sucked. So let's keep it real. We're going to be much better this year.
Okay. If you're a cornerback, okay, Bank. We're going to just out here keeping it. I'm out here keeping it real.
No, we had 0 interceptions, man. They had as many interceptions as Nevada Buck did.
As me and you?
Yeah, as me and you. I mean, that's impossibly bad. You can't do any worse than that. So if you're a cornerback and you look at the Ohio State depth chart, you're going to go, I can play. I can play with these guys.
Oh man, I mean, I would be so excited to go and get in there, and because Denzel's the guy that could leave, and Davidson, obviously people project to start. I think he's gonna have a great year, but I mean, our secondary, I mean, it is the land of opportunity right now. I'm telling you, it's like those guys. If I'm one of those guys and I'm trying to play, I'm like, I want to go to that school. But no, you're right. You're right. I was trying to be a little more delicate, I guess, but yeah, they did get scorched pretty good. And and again, it is demeaning when you don't turn the ball over on defense. That was one of the hallmarks of really good defenses. When I was there with the Silver Bullets, those guys forced a lot of turnovers. They would AJ Hawk would get his hands, and catch the ball and go the other way. He did that against Texas. He did that against Michigan State. Big plays. And those are massive momentum shifters. So when your corners can't catch anything and they can't break on a ball and get a pick, it's really, really tough to do. I'm going to switch the film over. We're going to talk a little bit about our boy Kingston. This is a guy that I know that the linebackers folks inside the building love Kingston. Big moose of a kid. Again, I don't know. Again, a 4-star from Bosco, Sam Searles, Mateo Uyangalele. 6'3", 227. You know, sometimes I worry in modern college football if these guys can stay small and quick, because I mean he's already 230 and he's probably not going to get down to 220. I mean he's probably going to go up to 240, and you get those big pluggers out there in space, and but he's a really really good player on film. I'm going to actually get his film tuned up right now, but again, Kingston, it's SC, Notre Dame, and Ohio State. I know James Laurinaitis has been putting in massive work with this kid. I know that those guys in the building love this kid. What are your thoughts on Kingston as I get his film dialed up?
Well, Kingston, comes from down our neck of the woods down here, and got a really good contact on him. And the first thing he said to me is that Laurinaitis hit it out of the park with him. And to me, that's what we've been streaming. That James has got to get on the road, but in this case,
No.
this was a home game. He was spending a lot of time with them there, and I think James might have put Ohio State into a position to maybe pull this kid. Tough pull, tough competition from USC on this one for sure. I mean, obviously Notre Dame's always going to be a factor, but USC is the big hometown team. But I think Laurinaitis has really done work on this, and if we get him, it will be because of James Laurinaitis. James has kind of taken this one on as a personal challenge. He's kind of going one-on-one with them, and I think he made great strides with them, had a great 48 hours with them, and really improved Ohio State's position. So great job by Laurinaitis in Ohio State this weekend.
Yeah, and this kid he's a wrecking ball. I mean, I love these kids because again you saw the pick six early in the film. When he gets to guys, I mean, he's got a lot of nasty behind his pads when he's running. Man, this guy, he hits hard. He's quick. Again, when you're playing teams like Michigan and you got to get that run stop, these are the kind of guys you want out on the field, because these guys, he's, like I said, he's quick to get, and he's playing. When you watch these teams, like he's playing, that's Mater Day. That's probably the best team in the country. Bosco Mater Day are probably the two best teams in the country last year. And you see him with Mateo, and then you see Brandon Baker. I mean, I think he just beat Brandon Baker for a sack right there. So I mean, this is like as big time ball could ever be. But I really, like I said, I love this kid. Again, people inside the Woody Hayes that know a lot more about defensive football than I do, and there's not many of them, but I'm just telling you, they love this kid, and they love his mentality, his aggression. His mind, because that's the thing that's really changed a lot on these official visits is, they put these kids on the grease boards. They'll put them up and give them a marker and say, okay, we're going to install this. They want to see you install it. They take it to a different level where they try to see the kid's cognitive ability, and that's something that we never used to do. I mean, you always want the kid to feel like kind of light and nice and comfortable, but I think that it's a next level thing when you can kind of see his cognitive awareness. How well can he install a play? How well can he remember a play? Because sometimes, you uncover something that maybe makes the kid look a little bit less attractive. But I love this kid's film. Again, that's why I was going to keep letting it run. It'd be interesting to see when he decides. But I think that, if anyone's going to nail this one, it's James. And James is the kind of guy that once he gets put on, he'll be an absolute rocket ship. Like, he'll be position coach 1 year, coordinator next year, head coach, within 5 years, and could he eventually be Ohio State's head coach? If there's one guy who's a former player that I want to be the head coach, it'd be James. And people think I'm crazy because of GA, but you go find me an Ohio State player that's more respected than James Laurinaitis over the last 50 years. Like, the only guys I can think of are him and AJ. So, AJ's not a coach, so James gets it by default. But yeah, you watch this, and like I said, I just, again, this is the biggest of big time ball. The kid, he gets a sack here, impact guy. This guy obviously they use as a blitzer. Opposite Mateo. Mateo's 11 here. Obviously, he went to Oregon, so you see the level of talent on the field, and and the plays. And obviously, this is his highlight film, but I mean, he looks better than Mateo. Mateo was the number one end in the country last year. So, but again, this is a kid that would be a nice signature win early on for James Laurinaitis. To go with Peyton Pierce, who was also in town. Obviously, we're not going to spend as much time on him because he already is in the boat. He's committed, really good player, really good athlete. The next guy we're going to run down is Miles Lockhart. Vaddy, you got some interesting intel on Miles Lockhart. He's deciding on July 6th, I believe. What's your intel on Miles Lockhart? Dig his film out real quick.
Buckeye. I think he's going to announce for the Buckeyes, and have every indication that that's where he's going. And I like the kid. I like, some people talk about him that he's a little more lightly regarded than some of the other guys that they're going after. But I like him a lot. I think you talk about that intellect, and this guy's got football intellect that's off the chart, and really kind of is like a force multiplier for his athleticism, because he's just always in the right spot, always anticipating where the ball and play is going to go. And I love him a lot. I think he's going to be a terrific Buckeye, and that should be an announcement that we're picking up here in the next 10 days.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a kid that people need to be excited about. He's probably a little, you probably rate a little bit lower. Again, I always think that there's a bit of a skew to some of these kids when they don't play in Georgia, they don't play in Texas, they don't play in Georgia. It's like that little like southern sphere plus California. When you're out in Arizona or you're out in, I mean, even Ohio, I feel like it's getting less and less because I just feel like people don't see you as often. People, I think this is actually, they're playing Rayola's team here. It looks like they're playing Chandler. It looks like Chandler's jerseys. I've watched enough of his film. But it's good. You see him here in the pedal, double move, all over it, good adjustment. Again, I think you take 3-4 corners this class. I mean, I think that, Xavier Brown's a guy that I know they're going after hard. He's a guy. He's also he's at Mater Dei, the team that Kingston was actually just playing against, and he's really, really good. I mean, he's like probably be the top dog. Him and Bryce would probably be ahead of Scott and Miles. But I think he's at positions like corner and O-line, where you're probably gonna have some attrition. You're gonna have some guys transfer out, some guys that are third and fourth year guys that aren't playing as much or they're not playing at all. You got to take maybe one more than you think, and you might have to be a little aggressive with that 85 scholarship cap and, try to get creative. Because the thing about NIL right now, this beautiful is, you can go get a kid like Lorenzo Salles Jr. from Notre Dame, convert him to corner. And if you don't have a scholarship for him, you could have an NIL foundation pay his tuition, which is what's happening right now. So Lorenzo Salles Jr. is a walk-on, but he's not paying any tuition. Like he's getting paid for through these NIL deals. And that was illegal and impossible before. Now it's completely kosher, which is something that, the really good schools are going to start doing some roster management stuff, and they're going to get even more aggressive and get to 90, 95 scholarships essentially with 5 to 10 artificial scholarships, which again, hey, as you're processing kids and you're getting kids, that are bad takes out of the program, like you can go bring in another kid and put them on scholarship, via these foundations. So yeah, yeah.
Well,
Terry
on
Nickel-
that top,
Good.
no, on that topic, which again is a really underrated, great point about the way that you kind of can skirt the rules on scholarship numbers. I mean, for Ohio State, if you're Ohio State, do that with Ohio offensive linemen. First of all, those are types of kids that be more inclined to accept deals like that, so that there wouldn't be an ego involved with it. They wouldn't care where the scholarship quote / NIL money was coming from, and go bag 4 or 5 Ohio prospects on top of the other guys you're doing every year. It would do wonders for your offensive line. You know what I'm saying? I mean, BYU's doing it with all their walk-ons, all their things. That's all paid for by by an NIL fund. Do that with Ohio linemen. Do that with that. There'd be absolutely no reason you would do it. You would develop absolutely deep and find every prospect and every hidden gem in the state of Ohio by doing that. And if I'm Ohio State, and I know you're listening to Ohio State, remember Nevada said, do the Nevada Ohio offensive lineman NIL fund, and your issues on offensive line, to the degree that you have any, will melt away within 3 or 4 years for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like what I would do is say, okay, look, here's the deal. We don't have it. Like if you're William Satterwright, a kid who I love on film, he's got an Alabama offer. We have not gone after him. We're not going to go after him for whatever reason. Maybe say, okay, here's the deal. We don't have a scholarship for you, but we could do an NIL deal. And plus, if you take the NIL deal instead of the scholarship, we'll throw in an extra 30 grand cash. Like, what kid wouldn't do that? I know that there's like this prestige to being on scholarship at Ohio State. And, you get to sign on signing, whatever. It's like, but okay, you could take like the old school, like full scholarship to Ohio State, or you could take the new school NIL scholarship that it pays exactly the same, pays all the same bills. You get the same meal, same stipend, same per diem, everything, but you also get 30 grand cash on top of it. Like, to cure the sensitive kids that don't want to, they don't want to, say, oh, I'm actually walking on at Ohio State. When you're not really walking on. Like Lorenzo Salles Jr. is technically a walk on, but he really isn't, because his everything's getting paid for. So it's like a technicality thing. But like I'd say, well, you get 30 grand cash if you can overcome that technicality, and you can dry your tears with $100 bills. Like, that's what I do. And then you could go take 7 or 8 offensive linemen every year, and and after a year or two, when you put all these guys against each other and you see who can do it and who can't, like, because I'm telling you, every spring, Justin Fry's there, and they're always a little short on the O-line. The O-line's always hard because you get a couple injuries, a couple guys go pro early, and spring ball, you get to that third O-line and it just looks like mush. It looks terrible, and you can't hide bad offensive linemen. You can hide maybe a bad corner, put him at nickel, or a bad safety and hope they don't throw it over his head, or a nose guard. But man, you got a bad guard in there, a bad center, bad left tackle. I mean, it's really ugly, and it's painful to watch. So, but that's what I would do at those premium positions. Really, it's the late developing positions, the positions where you have to move a defensive tackle over to offensive guard, like we did with Billy Price, or you have to move a tight end to tackle, like we did with Reed Fragel. Like, I'm just telling you, like those are what you have to do at the line. Like, I played tight end my entire career in high school. I never played a single snap offensive line in high school. And then I go to Ohio State, I go to offensive tackle, and I wanted to redshirt because I needed, to learn how to play tackle. I mean, I physically wasn't ready to go. And then after the next, then my redshirt freshman year started. So, I don't know. I think that, if you could go, because the other thing you would do if you did that is you would cripple Michigan, because Michigan is feasting. They took Ben Roebuck out up at St. Ed's, a big right tackle. They took Hamilton, who's a really good player. Those are 2 kids we could have taken if we would have done this little NIL deal, and say, hey, if you can get over your sadness of being a walk-on, you get 30 grand cash or whatever, and the other guys don't get it or whatever. But it's going to be interesting to see, if they adopt that. And again, people say, well, the roster will get too heavy, there'll be too many kids, but I like to see these kids, it's almost like that first year when they're there, man, you can really get good evaluations of these kids in the weight room, in practice, in scrimmages, because you don't get that at these stupid camps. Like, these camps are so dumb now. They're so short. Like the Ohio State camps last week were like 2 hours long. They used to be like 6 hours long. And so, you get like the worst, you get the most short-term evaluation you ever could get. And, it's just to the point now where you just want to see what the kids look like in person, and it doesn't really matter. The drills don't even matter anymore. So there's not as much of a technical nuance deal like there used to be, which is fine. I mean, again, the Ohio State guys, they know what they're doing with the camps. They know that these camps are getting more and more worthless year over year. But I think that if you do this walk-on plus program, or whatever you want to call it, this scholarship plus program, you get to see these guys play real football against Ohio State freshmen and sophomore defensive linemen and whatever. So, and then you mitigate how many misses you get, and you cripple Michigan at the same time. What are your thoughts on that, Nevada? Because that was a long one.
No, I think it's a genius idea, and I think if Ohio State did that, it would have far-reaching implications on. And like you said, I can think of 4 or 5 kids right now that would fit that criteria, perfectly to a T. And like you said, those are all kids that are going to other schools, primarily Michigan. So, helps you, hurts your main rivals. So win all the way around the board.
And that's what Woody Hayes used to do. I mean, back when there weren't scholarship limits, he would offer every guy that had a pulse, just so they couldn't go to Michigan or Notre Dame or Michigan State, so you didn't have to see them. So, and again, once they get there and they figure they can play or they can't play, or some guys a pleasant surprise. I mean, because there's some guys that are big time tweeners that I wish we would have taken. Like Ryan Kelly will always stand out to me because we didn't offer Ryan Kelly, which was idiotic. I mean, Ryan Kelly was the first round pick for the Colts, went to Bama. He was from I want to say Lakota West, down in Cincinnati, and we were up against it, and we had like 5 bad takes the year before. That was when we took Chris Carter and all these guys that weren't really real. None of them played. They're terrible. But when you can get those guys, like I mean, like I love William Satterwhite. Like I watched his film, I was like, I'd take that kid in a heartbeat. And Bama, gave him a real offer. I mean, Eric Wolford's a Youngstown State head coach, knows the area, knows Hoban. I don't know if you want to jerk around like Hoban the way they're producing talent and they're getting all these good kids from Northeast Ohio to go there. So, you can't do the fake offer thing too much with a school like Hoban. And so, if that kid ends up going to Bama and becomes a good player there, then that's the guy that we probably should have taken. And the Roba kid, I think he's kind of plateaued. And again, he's a kid, he's huge. He's like 6'7", 6'8", right tackle only kind of kid. But, again, like it's hard to evaluate these kids at camps because some of these kids look great in helmets. It's the old cliche, they look good in helmets and shorts and running around at these stupid rivals camps. And even the Ohio State camps are stupid because you're just in helmets. And really the only competitive thing you do is one-on-one pass rush, which most of the O-linemen look terrible in that anyways. But when you get to Ohio State, you get to see these guys run block. You get to see them learn plays. You get to see them, how are they going to tighten up and really focus on football? Are they going to go kick it and party? Are they going to be too focused on NIL deals and not care about like the real nitty gritty to being an Ohio State football player? So, again, I if I was Justin Fry, I would pray for this every night before I went to bed. I'd say, look, I want to be able to take 7 linemen every year and have 2 be that scholarship plus, and and then your line will always be deep, and you always have good players, and the guys that can't play will transfer out anyway. So you always have like a big healthy O line room, which again, when you're an O line coach, that's just a dream because you remember on the O line you got to play 5 guys. It's the only place on the field where you got to have 5 guys on the field at all times, and so you're always looking for new bodies after injuries and transfers, and with the way Stud recruited, like all the early entrants we had. I mean our O line room is depleted because we had so many guys go pro after 3 years, and that's unheard of at the offensive line and especially at Ohio State. So I think I can click this off.
Well, one other thing on that too. Think about how much money that would cost you. I mean, how much would that cost you per year per kid? 60 grand, 70 grand, 50 grand, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's nothing.
I mean, so nothing. So you multiply that times 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever. You're talking about $300,000 or $400,000. I mean, that doesn't even chip into the let's get CJ Stroud a second Bentley fund. You know what I'm saying? Like, and for that return on investment, you'd have a completely stocked offensive line room. Not only stocked, but you'd have a pair, a spare, and another pair at every position. So I mean, to me, no brainer. Let's get on at Ohio State.
Yeah, and the thing is these things always sort themselves out. There's guys that when I got the Ohio State offer back in the olden days, there were a couple kids that were in Ohio that should have gotten Ohio State offers with me that were good players that had nice NFL careers that could have helped us. Frankly, like Mike McGlynn was good, played in the league for 5-6 years, whatever it was. Like he could have played at Ohio State. There's a handful of other guys that were they went elsewhere, like Steve Vallis, or there were a bunch of guys from my era that went elsewhere because Ohio State didn't offer, but they were good enough to play at Ohio State. Because a lot of times in high school, you just don't know. There's kids that are MAC guys that are NFL draft picks, and they get drafted ahead of Ohio State guys because they were late bloomers, they were late developers, and I've seen guys change their body comps. I've seen guys get addicted to partying at Ohio State. There's a million things that can either go right or wrong for college football players, but for linemen, you're unless there's only like one Paris Johnson on earth every year. And, if we get him, awesome. But otherwise, you're going to get a guy that's got to gain weight, a guy that's going to lose weight, guys that have to get better at pass blocking. There's never like a finished product like a Paris Johnson or a Laramie Tunsil. So you got to take some projects. I mean, to me, the biggest thing, if you could glean one thing from this podcast, the one thing I will say is it's never been harder to develop offensive linemen than it is right now in the history of football, because you can't have contact to practice. You have so little contact to practice. There's no 2-a-days anymore. So most of these guys can't run block at all. They have no idea how to do it. And a lot of these offenses are so pass happy that it's a lot of pass protection stuff. And, linemen are almost all projects now, like the O linemen, just because there's so little practice time, especially in high school. In high school, man, it is like, you get like a couple days of contact during camp, and then every other day is like you're in helmets and jerseys, and like in the olden days, it was like 2 days every day, 7 hours a day. I mean, long days, hard days, physical days, and it's just not like that anymore. Everything's been contact's been legislated out of football by the high school associations, and even in college, like there's no more 2 days. So I mean, there's and then the practices they have are just less physical. There's less allowed contact, and so it's hard to develop offensive linemen when you can't have any contact. Like receivers can still develop like crazy, and they're probably more skilled than they've ever been because there's jugs machines and monarch machines and all that stuff. But like for the O line, it's gone backwards because the only way you can get better at O line is by playing, blocking people, and live fits, live hitting, inside run. A lot of the drills we used to do, like circle drill and stuff, those are banned. Oklahoma drill is banned. So you got a lot more projects now, and it's not the high school coach's fault. It's just he's not allowed to coach them anymore. He's not allowed to put the screws in them anymore. So what are we at? About 36. What do you think, Nevada? Any final thoughts? We've got I need to I'll put Gary on because I love Gary on. Gary on Conley's a great kid, man. The kid got screwed. I'm happy for him that he got out of that. What do you think, Nevada? Any final thoughts on official visit weekend? Coaches are about to hit the vacation trail for about 3 weeks. Recharge those batteries.
No, just Ohio State. Ohio State had a great weekend. They had a great weekend. There really were no kids that came in this weekend that we didn't make up ground on. Obviously, we went into the weekend with some questions, some drama with West, and we landed both the Glenville kids. We're right where we need to be with Scott. With Kingston, we're making up ground. With the other Scott, the defensive tackle, we're in a great spot with him as well. So no, this was a very good weekend for Ohio State. And again, got some big dominoes ready to fall for Ohio State in the near future as well. So no, I mean things are very good for Ohio State right now on the recruiting trail. They're doing a terrific job, and again, they're dialing in the NIL stuff. They're knowing when to push. And again, another little indicator, you can always tell how good Ohio State feels about a kid. Are they increasing the size of the bag? Are they feeling that they're kind of in a desperate situation where they've got to kind of make it bigger? Or are they sitting tight with where they are? That kind of gives you a pretty good idea of where they are. And Ohio State feels really good, the situations they are with these kids, with these recruits, and that gives me a lot of comfort.
I totally agree. Brass Texas, you're always on here. I appreciate you, my man. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that Friday didn't like Roebuck's ankle flexibility and lack of athleticism. Banks saw him at a rivals camp, said that he didn't look good. But again, he's not the kind of guy that looks good in a camp setting because he's a 6'8", like ogre, big boy, right tackle. Like looks like he should be playing it. He looks like every offensive tackle in the history of Wisconsin Badger football, basically. Big 6'8", like monster, like come off the ball, kind of zone block left, right, and just maul people. And that's the thing is like if you're a great run blocker, you don't get to show any of that in a camp setting, like any of it. You might get to hit a sled or do some dumb fit and finish drill or whatever, but that's not the same as pads, helmet, that kind of stuff. And that's where a guy like Ben Roebuck would excel. And again, that's why, like I said, you take 7, 8 offensive linemen every year and just make it the super lineman plus award or whatever. Because if you told me you could either have a scholarship or you can have 30 or 50 grand cash and be a walk-on, but you don't see any bills. They pay all your bills all the same as a scholarship. I'm taking the money, dude. And I might be a walk-on, but I'm walking on alligator loafers. I promise you. I'd be walking in that thing with some $5,000 dead alligators on my feet. And I'd say, yeah, you guys can call me a walk-on. I'm the walk-on with the new Benz and, we're riding. So, but I don't know. I think that's a great idea. I'm really proud of myself for that one. Nevada, do you think that they could ever get that done though?
I mean, look, you never say never in the age of NIL. I mean, I know people don't like talking about it. I don't like talking about it. I know it's a turn off for a lot of people because it seems like it's the professionalization of college football, that sport that we all love, a lot. But it's just the reality, and Ohio State's getting better at it to making sure that they're staying competitive. But this would be a way that they could wedge ahead, and you're always looking for, whether it's business, sports, whatever, you're looking for stuff that's kind of, low cost, high impact. Well, this is super low cost and would be super high impact. And those are the types of ideas that you can really have traction with. So I know you're listening to Ohio State. Let's get on it.
Yeah. And scholarships, people don't realize, like, they do a 4-year guarantee. So you do a 4-year guarantee and it ends up being, $200,000 or whatever out the door for a walk-on plus. But again, like, I don't worry about room size and flexibility anymore because these kids transfer. These kids that are miserable and they're not playing and they want to play somewhere, like, they hit the portal and they go. And it's going to happen every year. We're always going to lose 10 to 15 kids to the portal, and it is what it is. So, but I think it'd be great. So I'm going to wrap this show. Appreciate you guys as always. I really appreciate you guys. This has been an awesome, awesome run. Again, our stuff has been growing like crazy. We're almost at 20,000 subs on YouTube. So shout out you guys. Appreciate you guys. If you enjoyed this content, please give us a like, click subscribe. And if you like our live shows, click that little bell. Shout out where you're from down below. Also, shout out who's going to be our next commit. A lot of smoke around Scott. Obviously, he's the kid that everyone's kind of watching. Miles Lockhart really doesn't count because everyone knows he's committing on July 6th. But yeah, I'd love to see what you guys have for us and project that. So you put it in the comments down below who's going to be our next commitment. So as always, we appreciate you guys. If you enjoy the show, BuckeyesCoop.com needs to be your new sanctuary because we are on there nonstop. We had a crazy weekend. It was nonstop coverage, huge threads. Bill the Bank Green is bringing recruiting stuff tomorrow. I took a little bit of time off this weekend, and we are just going to be cranking all the way through the next month. And before you know it, we're going to be into training camp. Training camp begins at the beginning of August. I believe it's like August 5th, and then it is go time. Fast forward, buckle your seatbelts. Ohio State football is here, ladies and gentlemen. So if you enjoy Ohio State football and you want to be a part of the best crowd there is, Buckeye Scoop, it needs to be your new home. Appreciate you guys as always. Thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. Thank you, Scoop family. And if you enjoy the show, send it to a friend. Shoot them a text. Say, hey, check this out. Put a lot of good work into this stuff. Appreciate all you guys bringing the juice with us. And thank you so much. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Go Bucks.